Suicide rates have increased by 30% in the past 10 years alone. In fact, there are more people who commit suicide every year in America than people who die in car accidents every year in America. Today, prescription painkillers kill more people when they're overdosed than cocaine and heroin combined. Medication seems to be kind of only putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. We ignore depression. We don't talk about it. We numb it. We medicate it. That's not the only thing we do. If we do talk about it, normally it's in a derogatory sense. We mock depression. Now, I want you all to take a look for a second at the screen, because I think this is just it's a 1-minute little clip from a comedy show, but I think this is just a great picture of when we do talk about depression, kind of the light in which we talk about it. Go ahead and take a look at the screens.
Now, if you feel like this election's been bumming you out, you're not the only one, because this week, a study was released by the World Health Organization showing that the United States is the third most depressed country in the world after India and China. Yeah, I know. When Americans heard the news, they were like, oh, we only got a third? And I got to say, look, America, you've got to buck up, all right? Look, I understand India, China, they're overpopulated, they're polluted, but America, you guys are like, oh, there's no Wi-Fi at this restaurant. How am I supposed to Snapchat my sliders? I'm sad now.
You know, we watched that, it's funny. I mean, James Corden's a funny guy. And he's a comedian, right? His show is intended to make us laugh. But that news report he talked about is not a fake report. In 2016, America was labeled the third most depressed country in the world. And we ignore it. And if it is talked about, maybe we mock it or joke about it. But the reality is this. Depression doesn't seem like it's going to be going anywhere anytime soon. It seems as though it's here to stay. And to be quite honest, based upon the statistics and how we see people talking about depression in our world today, the future looks pretty bleak for those of us who walk through and struggle with depression. And this is what I want to talk about tonight. I want to talk about depression. And here's what I want to do. Even though it can be difficult, even though it can be heart-wrenching to confront depression, I want to look at it square in the face tonight, and all of its ugliness, and all of its awkwardness, and I want to confront it. And I don't want to confront it with any kind of good advice that I can give you. And I don't want to confront it with kind of a 3 or 4 step plan for you to get happy again. I want to confront depression with the gospel. The good news about who Jesus is and what Jesus has done for you. And here's the deal tonight. You might have walked into this room and you could have never been happier in your life. You're at the top of the world. Guess what? This message is still for you. You might have walked into this room tonight and you're at your lowest point. This message is for you as well. So here's what I want to do. I want to pull a couple things from that story that we read a minute ago. From the interaction that we saw that Elijah had with God and with others. Because there's some things that we can pull from that story tonight that even though it happened thousands of years ago, will speak to us even today. It will, I believe, speak to even some specific issues and situations that y'all are walking through tonight. So, first thing is this. If you have a pen, I want you to write this down. The first thing we see in this story with Elijah is that no one is immune to depression. Nobody is immune to depression. The first thing that you have to understand tonight from the story is that you are not above depression. It's a beast that will devour anybody. And we see this in our story that we just read. I mean, up until this point in Elijah's life, Things have been going pretty well. In fact, one chapter earlier in 1 Kings chapter 18, Elijah walks away from what is perhaps the greatest spiritual victory he has ever experienced or will ever experience in his entire life. He has this showdown with prophets of Baal, many prophets, multiple prophets, who claim that their God is the one true God or is a greater God than Yahweh, Elijah's God, the God of Israel, the one true living God. So there's this epic showdown, maybe you've heard before, where God brings fire from heaven and he engulfs this altar that was made. After it even had water thrown on it, he engulfs it with fire. Elijah walks away. It's an incredible experience for him. Elijah doesn't seem like a guy who, if you knew his circumstance, would walk from a place like that into a place of depression. And yet we see that Elijah is depressed in our story that we read tonight. Here's what that means. Listen to me. If you're here tonight and you're depressed, if you're here tonight and you're sad, you need to understand that you are not abnormal. You're not abnormal. And that lie that you've been hearing that says you're the only one that feels this way is just that. It's a lie. Nobody is immune to depression. That's the first thing we see here. The second is this. If you're here tonight and you're not depressed, you're not walking through a season of your life where you're sad, where a gray cloud is hanging over your head, you need to realize that depression might be a reality for those who are around you. Or it might be a reality that you're right about to step into, because nobody is immune to it. Now, I don't say that to scare you. I say that because I think we see in this story a very clear development of depression. I mean, take a look at verse 1 again. Take a look at verse 1. It says that Ahab told Jezebel, it's an evil queen, everything that Elijah had done, and now that he had killed all the prophets of the sword. Look what Jezebel says. She sent a messenger to Elijah and says, "May the gods punish me and do so severely if I don't make your life like the one of them by this time tomorrow." Basically, she's saying, Elijah, I'm coming after you and I'm going to kill you. Elijah's on the top of the world, guys, and then he gets this news. And the slippery slope begins. Here's the first thing that we see in this kind of downward slope. We see that first and foremost, Elijah walked through a point in his life of disappointment. He was disappointed. Things had not gone his way now. He had an unfulfilled expectation. I mean, he's walking out from the greatest spiritual victory of his life, and now he finds out that someone wants to kill him. He's walking through a season of disappointment. That's disappointing news. Things didn't go Elijah's way. And listen to me, this is how depression begins in our lives. It begins as a bad circumstance. It begins as an unfortunate event. It starts as disappointment. And we all encounter disappointments in our lives. But here's the problem. When our disappointments move to something deeper, when our disappointments move to something greater, we see ourselves not moving away from disappointment, but further and deeper into it. That's what we see in Elisha. Not only was he disappointed, but the next thing he experienced was despair. He experienced despair. I mean, look at verse 3, what he says to his servant. He went to Beersheba that belonged to Judah, and then he says that he left his servant there. Elijah leaves his servant, the one person who was there for him, the one person who was by his side, the one person who was sympathizing with him in this entire situation. He tells him, stay here. I'm going to keep going. What does Elijah do? He's despairing in his disappointment. And how do we know that? Because he's isolating himself. You know, some of you have either just walked through or are currently walking through a disappointing situation. And can I tell you that your problems are only going to intensify and get worse if you begin to isolate yourself. If you begin to push away the people who will love you the most. Disappointment, despair. Last thing we see in Elisha is that now he goes from disappointment to despair to destructiveness. He begins to get destructive. I mean, look what the dude says. So he sat down under a broom tree and he prayed that he might die. Elijah reached a point where he was hostile even towards himself. His spirit was critical. He was becoming impulsive. He wasn't thinking straight. And he had become dangerous, not only to himself, but to those who were around him. His disappointment caused him to despair. His despair caused him to get destructive. Do you see how quickly it happened in Elijah? Why do I tell you that? Here's why. Because Elijah's life demonstrates that depression, it can come to anybody. None of us are immune to it. Not even the greatest spiritual leaders are immune to it. I mean, we see that all throughout history and in the Bible. Moses struggled with depression. David struggled with depression. Job struggled with depression. Look throughout history. Charles Spurgeon, one of the greatest preachers ever to live, struggled with depression. Mother Teresa, one of the greatest ladies to ever do any kind of social justice or humanitarian work, struggled with depression. People who knew God and loved God, and yet they walked through and struggled with depression. Why? Because nobody is immune to it. Nobody's immune to it. It's a beast that will devour anybody. Nobody is immune to depression. That's the first thing I want you to see tonight.